Disclaimer: the following video will contain spoilers. After a near-fatal car accident back in 1993, Sonny Haye's Brad Pitt becomes a gun for hire. That is, until he is given the opportunity by his friend Rueben, Javier Bardem, to jump back into the wheel as an F1 driver for his failing team, Apex GP. Before I begin, I do have to clarify that I am not knowledgeable about this motorsport. I have not seen any races, nor do I understand much of the terminology, strategies, or rules and regulations. On that aspect, I have no rightful say. However, where I can speak on the matter is the story itself. So despite my lack of knowledge and what I've read online, I would still consider this movie successful. Here's why. F1 is a movie made for entertainment. It wasn't meant to depict 100% realism with the precision and accuracy of this motorsport. Yet, it did not make a mockery of it either. That is, because F1 was a highly character-driven movie where, although some people might not have an understanding of the sport, they can follow along with the story. After all, the movie provides ample time to go over the basics, such as terminology and/or rules for the audience to follow along. Moreover, the movie always puts emphasis on its characters and their journey, rather than external parameters such as F1 driving. Putting more focus on characters allowed both viewers, fans and casual viewers alike, to follow along. Of course, there were still those who looked at the details and were not too happy at what they saw. For that, I think it depends on your opinion, where you wouldn't be wrong for disliking how these details were depicted. After all, it is a fictional story about a real sport that has garnered a lot of popularity and love. For my review, just keep in mind that I'm looking at the fictional story more than the actual sport, as I cannot speak of the sport. It is not my intent to critique those who love the sport. Anyway, apart from that, the visuals like the cinematography were astonishing, working hand in hand with the story, creating a vibrant form of storytelling. Therefore, F1 did a fantastic job in the fields of characters, structure, and cinematography. But without further ado, let's begin. When characters drive the story forward. I'm sure you've heard it before time and time and again, but in case you have not, a character can either be active or passive. No matter the type of character he or she is in a story, it all boils down to them being either active or passive. Active characters are those who take initiative, take action, and then react to effects of said actions, cause and effect in short. Whereas passive characters are all about reacting. They usually get dragged into something that was not caused by their actions, nor do they make any meaningful decisions that would carry out the story. Instead, they tend to observe the world around them, as it forces them into situations that their actions did not take them into or help get them out of. Actions reveal the true nature of a character. So when a character does not perform any actions, then you don't truly know this character. He doesn't resonate with you, not allowing you to fully connect with or care for him as a result. Therefore, you want active characters in your story. Sure, you can have an uncontrollable incident that was not caused by any actions that drag your protagonist into the fray. However, how he acts afterwards and throughout the story must paint him as an active character. But it doesn't stop there. As I've stated in other reviews, you also need these characters to stick with the audience by making them likable and one we can sympathize with by seeing parts of ourselves within them. In order to do so, we need these characters to grab the audience. One way a character can grab the viewer's attention is by giving them some sort of quirk that sticks with the audience. While it isn't something that is precisely necessary, curiosity intrigues us into wanting to understand our character. Pair that up with a backstory, a goal, and a burden, then you've got yourself a pretty interesting character I'd want to know more about. But enough talk. How does this apply to F1? Well, in F1, each character is unique and resonates with me in a deeply fundamental way. To explain what I mean, let's go through three characters: Sonny, Joshua, and Kate. Carrie Condon. Sonny Hayes is a driver who has been reaching top praise until he had a near fatal accident back in 1993. Since then, he carries this burden with him of what could have been. This feeling of wanting to redeem himself but unable to go back to where he began due to his injuries completely prevents his passion of driving these type of cars.
It's rare, but sometimes there's this moment in the car where everything goes quiet. My heartbeat slows. It's peaceful, and I can see everything, and no one can touch me. I am chasing that moment every time I get in the car. I don't know when I'll find it again, but man, I want to. I want to.
This adds a huge weight on his shoulders as he tries to capture the same feeling in other types of races. Becoming a driver for hire, he is unable to recapture that feeling. Therefore, he also deals with lingering thoughts of redemption. So when Rueben comes with his too good to be true offer, he debates whether he should accept. Right off the bat, we have a charismatic character with a history, a burden, and a goal. In doing so, we can see part of ourselves within this character. We can resonate with him, cheer for him, but most importantly, follow him through the story. A chance for a comeback, for redemption, is something we can all understand and root for. We've all had moments where we want to prove our worth and overcome trauma. But the beauty of this movie is that it does not stop there. This movie carries several themes within these characters. Sonny Hayes not only represents the overarching theme of redemption, but it also has sub-themes of mentorship and following your passion for yourself and not for external fame and glory despite the circumstances that seem to weigh you down. Therefore, Sonny Hayes becomes a character we all root for. And in case you're paying attention, you must be wondering where the active aspect comes into play. Well, part of that would be mentioned in the next section, but here's a quick summary. He's a good driver, yet there are various obstacles, like his injury and internal foul play obstructing their chances of utilizing their approved car modifications, which provide instances that make the character active rather than passive. How? Well, these obstacles provide both internal and external conflicts. The road to riches, as they say, cannot be so easily obtainable. Otherwise, where's the glory when achieved? The victory feels earned when the protagonist and/or heroes struggle to get there. Their perseverance and get back up attitude is what makes the story feel worth it. By having obstacles that the hero has to overcome by being active, does the journey carry weight for the story's conclusion. In short, he has a backstory, a burden, a goal, and a quirk, resulting in a stable character that remains with us. So, in the story's conclusion, we leave the theater with awe and this feel-good feeling. Moving on to Joshua, Damsum Idris. Being a talented driver, but lost in arrogance and a lust for external validation, Joshua becomes blinded to what truly matters. That is, using his skills and talents and focusing more on driving. His motivations to prove his worth, not listening to his mentor Sonny, arguing and fighting bring forth that theme. All while including arcs and growths of his own. Since the first meeting, Joshua feels pressure and fear that his seat would be lost, despite Rueben reassuring that his seat is safe. But, most importantly, his career. Therefore, he clashes with Sonny to demonstrate that he is superior and he won't be going down without a fight. He actively decides not to listen to Sonny, judging his mindset, training, and strategy. Instead, he puts more focus on social media and the press to prove his worth. But as Kate mentions, F1 is a team sport, and by learning and growing does he put the noise down and focuses on driving and being a team player. In other words, after jumping these obstacles and hurdles provided by the story. So despite his arrogance and demeanor, we still sympathize with Joshua because we know the fear of potentially losing a career we are so passionate about. We too follow this character to the end and love to see his character arc come into play. Lastly, Kate. Kate's character is a little tricky. I do understand and see where people's complaints with her character come from. It does appear like her character's primary function is only to be the love interest. However, I want to slightly disagree with these comments on the sole account that she herself is her own character. Let me explain. Kate has been building these cars with safety precautions in mind, I deduce. So, keeping that in mind, I feel that this safety mindset kind of blocks her from building a faster car. Not to mention, Joshua's lack of assistance on how the car feels out on the track doesn't offer any useful information Kate can use to help build a better car.
What, on entries or exits?
Either. Both.
Oh, great, yeah.
Oh, there's 10,000 sensors on this thing and you can't tell me what's going on.
But I'm not out there, am I? So I'm gonna need your help on this, please.
Now, I do have to stop here and talk about her part of being in aerospace before being brought into F1. Personally, I feel like she knows about dirty air, but just hasn't applied it here on account of how different the parameters and precautions are. But if I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments down below. Seeing how different dirty air is in both fields and how she keeps safety parameters in mind, I can see how she might not have thought about it being used to overtake cars in corners, given that A, she's not a racer herself, and B, Joshua doesn't help her with anything of the sort. Now, before you go typing away arguing this opinion, there's also the structure and story response to this. If she does not know about this, then there wouldn't be some sort of conflict and obstacles. She could make a fast car and Sonny Haye wouldn't have been brought into the team. Joshua wouldn't understand and learn, but Kate would prove everyone wrong.
And you can replicate turns, lateral airflow?
No, just straight line drag. But I mean, we can calculate it from there.
Okay, what about turbulent air from a car we're following?
No, not exactly, but...
Track conditions, surface quality, weather, ambient temps?
I'm sorry,
You want me to redesign so you can follow closer?
We need to build our car for combat.
How am I supposed to make that safe?
Who said anything about safe?
So I can bend my suspension of disbelief a bit here because it coincides with each of these characters. It benefits their characters in the end. It also doesn't hurt her character because it isn't like Sonny Haye steps in and tells Kate what to do. He understands the car is a shitbox and knows that if they can overtake the cars in corners, they pose more of a chance of advancing positions. So he flirts his way into asking for modifications to not only fit his racing style, but for the betterment of the team. He doesn't tell Kate how to design the car, just what to look into. And no, it doesn't diminish her character from not knowing because again, she isn't receiving the help needed to know until Sonny arrives, which could be why she ends up falling for him.
New wing, new side pods. Any changes to the floor?
nothing the 8 other drivers wouldn't have figured out.
That's why they call me Lucky Number 9.
Now, people also bring out the Vegas scenes to classify Kate's character as being put into this love interest spot. Again, I understand where their criticisms and complaints come from because I see it. But I also see the other side.
Oh my God, with the phone. Put the thing down, will ya? What do you care what they say?
Easy for you to say they all love you.
It's just noise, man. Drive the car. You're really good at it.
If we look at the other side, this Vegas scene isn't to enforce the love interest. These scenes put heavy emphasis on characters primarily. These characters are still driving the story forward. It is Kate and Rueben who orchestrated the poker match to have Kate make Sonny and Joshua realize that they have more things in common than they believe. It also helps them bond and let out some steam. It is here that Sonny Haye tells Joshua to put the phone down and focus on driving because he is a good driver. It is here that we learn Kate's ambitions and Sonny's search for flying.
I'm here to prove everyone wrong. My ex my old boss. And until we win, I haven't. So unfortunately, I now rely on you.
So one day I realized what I'd really lost, and it wasn't the titles or the trophies or the records. It was the love for racing.
Yes, it is within a scene that can be seen as solely as the love interest scene, but when we put it all together, it isn't just that. The point I'm trying to make is that despite the valid criticisms of Kate's character being just a love interest and nothing more, I believe that Kate was still a good character because she stands somewhere because of her ambition and active status. Her dedication and her intelligence make her all a part of the team, and her own character some of us can resonate with. She wasn't pushed to the side to elevate Sonny. She made calls while evaluating the situations with quick time speed. She builds cars and helps make both drivers bond. That is the importance of her character. And yes, per Hollywood quota, she fulfills the love interest part of the structure. So in the end, F1 deals more with just driving. It brings characters and relativity into the forefront. This allows any viewer to understand and enjoy the movie. Sure, more racing or precision to the motorsport would have been appreciated, but then you, to a degree, alienate a part of the audience. Either way, giving more emphasis on characters and their internal and external conflicts, do I feel the races hold more value. We enjoy them more than we thought we would because there are stakes involved other than just placing first or racing. Therefore, I personally believe F1 succeeded with its characters because every character feels real. Every character serves a purpose, bringing forth valuable themes. Every character learns and grows, which resonates with us. And every character was active. A sturdy structure. I am not gonna lie. Structure is one aspect in script writing that I am still studying and trying to improve on, as there are quite a lot of story structures. With that said, the most common structures are the 3-act and monomyth structure, also known as the hero's journey. To get to my point, thankfully, F1 utilizes the conventional 3-act structure. Therefore, I can briefly talk about using the 3-act structure while offering 3 scenes within the movie as a reference to explain how well it worked. As we all know, the 3-act structure has a beginning, middle, and end, or in other words, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. For context, each act is divided into sections, or beats, which make up said act. Each act has its purpose within the story. Act 1 can be classified as setup, where we set up the world, characters, conflict, and theme. Act 2 can be classified as undergoing said conflict, also known as the meat of the story. This is where you'll find the reason behind your movie and why people decided to go see it in the first place. And last but not least, Act 3 can be classified as resolution. The story comes to a close, ending with a message. Characters have gone through a change of hearts, allowing them to overcome internal and external obstacles and, in some instances, return home. Structure is necessary when building a story because without it, not only would your story be hard to follow, but the story runs the risk of falling apart. And yes, even stories and movies whose events are not delivered chronologically have structure. If someone were to ask you what act is most important in a movie, what would you say? Would it be Act 1 because without the hook and a good setup, people will not follow your story? Or perhaps Act 2? After all, it's where you find the meat of the story and the obstacles that lead to character development. It could also be because it's the longest act, perhaps? Or maybe it's Act 3, as it brings the story to a close. Act 3 is where you see the hero's triumphant victory and see the theme and message come into play. And being the last few scenes, it would be the thing you remember most coming out of the theater, making it most important, right? Well, in my opinion, this is a trick question. There is no more important act. No act holds a higher purpose than the other. It's like Each of these acts is a puzzle piece, and asking the same question: which puzzle piece is more important? You can't classify one puzzle piece as being more important than the other if it takes all three to make a story. Sure, you can say that the last piece is more important as it completes the picture, but I think you're looking at this in the wrong way. Now, why does this all matter? Well, like I've stated before, if either one of these acts isn't sturdy, then the story begins to be difficult to follow, or the contents within the story do not have solid ground to stand on. Applying this context to F1, we can see that it follows structure very well. We'll just go over a scene from each section and explain how it worked and why it was good. Since Act 1 is set up, it needs to be able to present all the information needed in a way that doesn't feel like an info-dumping, dialogue-inducing, bland way that lets the audience's mind wander or be put to sleep. We need to hook the audience in. This is why the first 10 minutes of a movie are very crucial. These 10 minutes are what will either entrance or break the audience. If we do not allow the audience to stick with us for the rest of the movie, then it'll be hard to capture our viewers' attention later on. In F1, within these first 10 minutes, we get a clear representation of our protagonist. With a glimpse of an old-looking footage of a past race, Sonny is woken up abruptly for his turn at the wheel at the 24-hour Daytona race. Not only is he shown to be a good driver, but a reckless one. Although this involves racing, you find yourself entertained, all while gaining a bit of character. Once the race is over, he moves on to the next race. Being a nomadic racer for hire, the next race awaits. He's chasing something we have yet to find out what it is. Rueben arrives and offers the protagonist the call to adventure. This is present in the catalyst beat. Rueben insists Sonny return to F1 to make a comeback and help his failing team from being sold. Per structure, the whole section offers the catalyst and denial of the call, but it also provides conflict and stakes. Sure, it was done verbally, but as we'll see in the next few scenes, we can clearly see that what Rueben has mentioned is accurate. His team is the laughingstock of the season. The point is, in the opening we see that Sonny is a good driver, yet he denies being an F1 because you know how that turned out. I don't know about you, but I was curious to know why. We get tidbits of character with not only mannerism and quirks, but also his demeanor and charisma. This is a character I can follow along. When he accepts the call and we move on to Act 2, we do see that despite being a good driver, this is going to be a challenge for him. And that's a good thing. Remember what I mentioned earlier about the roads to riches? If Ruben's solution was solved just by bringing Sonny aboard, then this story would be boring. A good story offers conflict and obstacles, a bad car with a team unable to perform well, all while using these obstacles to provide a theme, redemption, and character development. Joshua putting the noise down and driving, and Sonny overcoming trauma and mentoring well. Lastly, I know what the conflict and story are going to be about moving forward within these 10 minutes. That is, redemption. All of this was done in a very visually pleasing way, making this opening and setup well executed. Or in other words, sturdy. For Act 2, I chose the midpoint. The midpoint is where we either see a false victory or a false defeat. This is where either the protagonist gets a taste of victory but realizes later what truly matters and carries on to achieve it, now having gone through a change, or a false defeat where it seems the antagonist has the upper hand, but as the story unfolds, the hero overcomes the antagonist. It also raises the stakes, time is waning, etc. etc. In F1, the midpoint is when Joshua gets into an accident following Sonny's advice. We are in the heat of battle. We are invested in the race because Joshua might actually have a chance to place higher than 10th. Sure, Sonny's strategy seems a bit far-fetched as he's not been disqualified and keeps getting away with little accidents and flag warnings. But we are entertained. Reaching the end of this intense race, Joshua overtakes at 11, and given how he still has tires that aren't meant for those weather conditions and his premature maneuver, he gets into an accident. Sure, the car might not fly in that manner or get into an accident the way it was depicted. However, per structure, the midpoint has to raise the stakes, and it does just that. How? Well, a few scenes earlier, Sonny calls Rueben late at night asking for insight on JP. Knowing a bit more and wanting to allow him to place first, as a way to help both Joshua and Rueben, he forms a plan to secure first. However, Joshua's impatience wounds him in the hospital, breaking their bond before it can fully develop. On his road to recovery, Joshua will miss the next 3 races. During that time, his media handler, I believe, Cash, Samson Kayo, spreads false rumors that Sonny might be a saboteur, using Joshua as a pawn to gain more fame and leave Joshua down in the dirt. Therefore, on his return, they brawl once more, essentially going back to the drawing board. Each character hasn't gone through this change of heart, and the time is running out. The team needs to win a race to save Apex from being sold. So, not only does this midpoint raise the stakes, the beauty is that this movie offers both a false defeat and a false victory. Do you need both? Not necessarily. One is needed, sure, but if done correctly, you can use both. A false defeat is Joshua's accident, which leads to them brawling it out again and not working as a team. This defeat becomes a false defeat if the two put their differences aside and work together, which they do by the end. A false victory is Kate's upgrades, the design fit for combat. It's a win, but without being able to work together and grow, it is not truly a victory, internally speaking. Lastly, for Act 3, I chose the last race. Obviously. Act 3 is where we see the change of hearts because the theme and message is applied to our protagonist. He takes what he learns and overcomes the last few obstacles to become victorious. In F1, before Act 3 begins, both Sonny and Joshua go through a change of hearts. Joshua informs Cash that he won't be needed for the day as he needs to put the noise down and focus on racing. He puts his ego aside, accepts fault in his accident, and works as a team with Sonny. Sonny is confronted by Peter Banning, Tobias Menzies, who informs him about the board's decision and offers him a seat once Peter buys off Apex from Rueben, which could lead to a legacy of champion. But coming to a change of hearts, Sonny reassures him on why he chooses to race and declines the offer before the race, focusing more on passion and helping his friend and riches. Being the last race, this is their last chance to prevent Apex from being sold. The stakes have never been higher, but working together, they now stand a chance. While there are still obstacles being thrown, the callback of that miracle comes into place, being able to give the last push the heroes needed. And again, the movie delivered it in such a fantastic way. You sit, tense, watching with anticipation and excitement as the race progresses. And when Sonny begins flying, you smile with the team because after all the hardships, the goal is achieved and Apex secures their first place victory, saving their team from being sold. In the end, the structure was really sturdy. You followed through the story without interruptions, allowing you to be fully invested, resonate with the characters, and enjoy the thrill of the races. Understanding structure allows you to build a sturdy story, one that flows nicely and allows viewers to become invested in your story. To do so, you have to know what each beat within these acts serve, have nice transition between these beats, while adding obstacles and hurdles that the characters have to jump over by being active, and these obstacles having to deal with external and internal parameters within our characters. Cinematography. I know I don't usually bring up technical aspects within filmmaking in my reviews. That makes sense as I tend to stick with understanding and viewing the story. But I figured I should start to look at more technical aspects as well. After all, this is a visual medium that I want to break into. Not to mention that cinematography helps add onto the story, providing context through the types of angles, lenses, etc. used. The reason I want to know more is that cinematography can also break the flow of your story, like with unnecessary close ups that don't hold significant payoff, or those weird close ups of feet touching the ground when someone jumps off from an elevated position that really adds nothing of value but a paused reaction from me, questioning the choice behind it. We've come into a new form of visual storytelling that sadly seems to be going into the wrong direction. That is, the shallow depth of field to capture that cinematic view, as some will call it. Now, I won't talk about that here in depth, but I encourage you to look up more videos of this topic as they can explain it far better than I ever could. But it boils down to this: movies don't focus on the background anymore. Instead of having visibility to the world beyond the foreground, it becomes blurred throughout the movie. This takes away the immersive feeling of the story. Sure, at times it could become more personal, where you aren't distracted by moving pieces in the background. As a result, for certain shots, I completely agree with this usage as it adds onto the story. But for many shots, it takes away from the atmospheric feeling, especially movies dealing with fantasy, adventure, or action, much like this movie. Looking at behind the scenes and how they filmed it made me want to add it onto my review because of how cool it was. Adding these small cameras onto the cars in both performance and real action was phenomenal. Utilizing real races to allude to that realism, yes, I know, was honestly a smart move from production. What I'm trying to say is that it feels authentic and real. I still know deep down that this still remains fictional and far-fetched, but watching it unfold, the feeling of it was real. I'm right there with them. I am following along their journey, and the cinematography entrances me and allows me to venture with these characters because of how it captures everything. It is why, when there are unnecessary shots, angles, or it's either too shaky, it breaks the flow of the movie and you run the potential of losing your audience. Cinematography matters in this medium, and like me, who is a visual learner, I rely on these visuals to fully captivate me. Again, it is still something that I can't fully explain, and I cannot bring my thoughts into actual words to describe the value and importance of cinematography, but I want to change that. To sum it all up, if you can depict or show, not tell, while managing to express emotions and feelings, then you know you're going the right direction with cinematography. But let me know down in the comments below if I should continue discussing more technical sides to the story in my reviews. In conclusion, F1 is a very entertaining and enjoyable movie that everyone can enjoy. And if you happen to dislike part of the movie because of your love for this sport, I am in no way saying your opinions are invalid or wrong. On the contrary, I admire your love and passion for the sport itself, as you're able to see the various flaws. However, not being knowledgeable of this sport and it being a fictional work of art, in my opinion, I can let some of those flaws slide. So let me know down in the comments below what you thought about the movie in that regard. Either way, its characters and cinematography really add onto the story, making it a feel-good redemption movie that almost motivates you in a way that feels odd. I was intrigued, I was captivated, and I was enjoying the movie, which at the end of the day is what makes a successful movie. But anyway, those are just my thoughts. Did you enjoy the movie? Let me know down in the comments below, and I'll see you in my next review. Until then, God bless.